All right, let's dive into the next question. Do you think AMC's strategy of ending the flagship to concentrate on spinoffs will work? If you don't mind me asking, how did you find out about that? We know streaming has completely changed the landscape. The days of huge ratings are long gone. I know I should ignore the waffle of the more bitter side of the fan base, or the fandom, but how low can ratings go before AMC decides it's not worth it? I know we're nowhere near that yet. I'm also curious about them selling to streamers. DD is going to be on Paramount Plus. I don't know if that's just in France. Has Dead City been sold to any other territories? I can't watch the show in my country. I would pay to watch them all if I could. Oh, I'm sorry. Would they make more money from it being sold around the world than it being watched on their own app? It baffles me why they're making these spin-offs so hard to watch outside America. Anyway, any info you have on all this stuff would be greatly appreciated. I don't know that I could give you any details the way you're looking for them. I can tell you what I know in general, but I'm not sure exactly what's going on with each of the intellectual properties of the spinoff. So first, let me answer your first question. I found that out about them shutting down the flagship show in favor of the spinoffs because they wanted to have the rights revert back to them. I found that out a couple of years ago. It was right around the time that Lauren Cohen was renegotiating her contract, and there was just a lot going on. And it was one of the social media managers for AMC that came out and talked about it. Now, they have actually a lot of social media managers. They have a whole network of people that post for them on social media. And, that's why they can kind of blitz, send out lots of articles at the same time for an episode and that sort of thing. But she just came out and talked about it and about the streaming model and how if, they signed the contract with Netflix back in the day, and it was very lucrative and a good thing to do when they signed it, but now it's a little bit outdated. And so if they want the rights to revert back to them, which they will make more money doing that, so it's a business decision, then this is just kind of the way they have to go about it. And this is exactly why we think that the spinoffs are short term. Even if they go 2 or 3 seasons each, okay, cool. But I think eventually we will go back into a main show, and have everybody together for the CRM war. I think Rick and Michonne will return, and Beth and Daryl will return. And I don't know, maybe Negan will stay in New York. I mean, it's always possible that they're going to set people up around the world in order to help fight the battle on different fronts or something. I'm not sure. We're not sure where they're going with that. But I think it will all be part of a main narrative eventually. I think it's interesting that you say the days of huge ratings are long gone. I actually don't think that's true. It's just that the way that we measure the ratings is very different. So I totally know what you mean. They used to say, oh, we pulled in 20 million viewers this week. And they don't say things like that anymore because very few people, a lot fewer, watch it live. But that's because of the streaming. And you have to understand that streaming, usually the way it works, and it's what I'm going to tell you here is very oversimplified. Okay, so it's a lot more complicated than this. It's almost like an algorithm where it's pulling in so many different variables that we couldn't possibly hope to keep track of them all or know what they all are. But the idea is that you're going to make more money based on how many people are watching the show, even when it comes to rating or to streaming, right? So let's look at something like the show. What is it called? Yellowstone. Oh, man, I totally blanked on the name of that show. I've watched Yellowstone. I like it. It's on one of the streaming services. I think it's Paramount Plus, but it's an original to Paramount Plus in the same way that The Walking Dead is an original to AMC. And everybody watches Yellowstone. I mean, I literally hear really famous podcasters talking about it and making references to it, okay? So it doesn't feel as big as The Walking Dead did back in the day or as Game of Thrones did back in the day, but let me tell you, it is, okay? Everybody watches Yellowstone, and it is one of the biggest franchises going on in the world right now. And the guy who created it and makes it has done several spin-off series because Yellowstone is doing so well. Okay, so viewership is still a really big deal when it comes to expanding a TV show. That's all I'm trying to say. It's just that we don't measure the numbers in the same way that we did when it was live on TV and everyone watched it at the same time. But I promise you, if people are not watching a show, it does not get expanded. It does not get renewed for a second season. The Walking Dead is still one of the most on-demand shows in the world, okay? I said on-demand, in-demand shows in the world. And they make money a lot of ways. You know, they make money not only on people watching the show, they do make good money that way, but they also make money on the merchandise, on the games, on the cons they do, different characters. I mean, a lot of different things, right? But the point is, like you said, the bitter side of the fandom talks about how this show sucks and the ratings suck and why are they keeping it on? It's just because they have all this money in reserve. And I mean, to a certain extent, because it is so successful, then yeah, they do have some money in reserve in which they can sort of float parts of it that maybe aren't doing quite as well, but not for very long. That's not a good business strategy. And if they were constantly trying to float a show that was not making them money, they're going to run out of money really fast doing that, okay? So even when it comes to the spinoffs like Fear the Walking Dead and The World Beyond, which people said did not do very well, and I'm sure that's true. I don't think they're lying. I don't think viewership-wise that those spinoffs had anywhere near the viewership that the flagship show had, and certainly they didn't come anywhere close to the Daryl Dixon spinoff in viewership. But they still must have been pulling their weight at least somewhat and making money, or they would not have gone on for as long as they did, at least in terms of Fear the Walking Dead. I mean, The World Beyond only lasted 2 seasons, and it was planned to only last 2 seasons. So that was probably okay. They probably just greenlighted both of them at the same time. But anyway, if something's going to go on for a long time, it really does have to be pulling its weight. So when people say the ratings are down, therefore The Walking Dead is going to be canceled, guys, that's just not true, okay? Even if the ratings are down from what they were once upon a time before, that doesn't mean they're down far enough that the show is going to get canceled. If it's still doing well, and trust me, it is still doing very well, they're going to keep doing it, okay? So I'm not worried about it going anywhere. That's just bitter people online ranting about stuff, or it's people who don't like where the show is going. It's gone in a direction that they didn't want. And so, or they're just annoyed with it and think that it's gone on too long. And that's fine. They're welcome to feel however they want. But that doesn't change the fact that if there's a lot of people in the millions still watching it, then they're going to continue to make the show. And right now, there most definitely is. Okay. As for selling to streamers, this is the part that I'm a little bit fuzzy on because I just don't know. I don't follow it closely enough to know what's been sold where, and I'm not even sure that that's public information. So I have no idea if Dead City has been sold anywhere or not. I can tell you that they want you to be able to watch it in your country, and I'm sure they're doing everything they can, but it does come down to a money issue and a contractual issue. So I'm sure they will get them out to you as soon as they can, but it's just taking longer to figure out the streaming rights overseas. It could be that it'll be on different networks, so I don't know if it's going to be on Paramount Plus here, but you did say, I think you asked if they make money from it being, oh, okay. Would they make more money from it being sold around the world than it being watched on their own app? Well, I think the objective is to do both. So part of the reason that they did the spinoffs is because they want they call it intellectual property, which just means, it's the property of a book or a TV show or a play or a film. It's called intellectual property because it's a digital download. We don't have usually a physical copy of it anymore, like a DVD or a VHS, but the intellectual property, which just means the rights to allow people to buy it and watch it in whatever format, they needed it to revert back to them so that they can continue to make money and decide where it's going to be distributed. So that was actually kind of the point of doing the spinoff. And that way they can have it on their own app, but they can also push it out to different networks or different streaming services, and either way they make money on it. So I couldn't say exactly why they haven't done that in a way that people can watch it overseas yet, except that it tends to be complicated to get streaming rights overseas. It could be that overseas, the streaming companies are asking for things that AMC is not willing to give them, like exclusivity or more money, a bigger chunk of the pie than AMC is willing to let go of. Things like that. They just ends up being contractual disputes. And I'm sure that it will get pushed out to other countries eventually, but it does tend to take longer. So I'm sorry that you can't watch it. I wish that there was some way that we could get it to you, but I think you will get it eventually. Again, you just got to be patient and wait a little longer. Beyond that, I'm not really sure. Like I said, I don't follow the ins and outs and details of the business part and the streaming services. I just know in general how these things kind of work. So it's something along those lines, and maybe eventually they'll release why there's been a little bit of a lag there. But like I said, I don't think that they're purposely making them hard for you to watch. That's not what they want. It's just it's just life and the complications of business, and everybody wants a piece of the pie and everybody wants to make money. And so it can take time to work these things out. But hopefully it won't be too much longer. I mean, back in the day when they would have them on TV, unless you were recording it with VHS, which by the time this was on, most people didn't have VCRs anymore. We would watch it on TV, but then we had to wait for either the DVDs to come out or for it to go on to Netflix so that we could watch it again. There was no way to rewatch it unless you were buying it. And back then, I think you could buy it episode by episode on Amazon, but it was really expensive to do that. So most people weren't doing that at the time. So I remember waiting either for the DVDs to release or waiting for it to come on Netflix so that I could rewatch the whole season, if I hadn't bought it. And this is kind of similar to that. I think it's just a matter of waiting for it to come out in other countries. And it sucks that you have to wait and it takes a long time and it feels like forever, but it'll get there eventually. So hang in there. I'm sure it'll get to you. And until then, you have us to talk to. Let's put it that way. All right. Next question. Not sure if this has been confirmed, but how did Beth get the scratch mark on her face with stitches prior to arriving at Grady? Something must have happened at the funeral home while she was retrieving her stuff when the Walker horde invaded the home. What do you think? I think it probably happened when Gorman and O'Donnell, the two cops, when they put her in the car. So this is actually another thing that I hope and I think we will see. If you watch Still is almost 100% from Daryl's point of view. And that may sound like a silly thing to say because we see Beth a lot. Obviously, we see what's going on with her. But especially once he opens the door and the Walkers come in, we see everything from his point of view. We experience what he experiences. So he goes down in the cellar. We don't see Beth go out the window. We don't see what happened to her when she goes up the road. We see what he sees and what he experiences. And then when he comes out, he sees her bag on the ground and he sees the car drive away, but we do not see her get put into the car. We do not see her experience of that side of it, okay? I'm hoping that when she shows up and they go back and do her whole story, I actually hope they start at alone. And I hope that they show us her point of view, what happened when Daryl was leading the Walkers away and she went up the road and was supposed to meet him. I really hope we see that. And the reason that I think there's a good chance we might is because there's a lot of people that think she was bitten right then. So if you go back and look at it, Daryl comes running out into the yard and he sees this Walker. And at the time, the first time you're ever seeing that and watching it, it's just some random Walker that he sees in the yard and he kills it so that it doesn't bite him, and then he keeps running and then he sees Beth's bag. But people have looked at that Walker and there is a lot of blood around its mouth. I mean, like it's drooling blood, more than a Walker really should be. So there's a theory that maybe that Walker just bit someone or was just trying, gnawing on someone, eating someone, and that's why all the blood around its mouth and coming out of its mouth is coming from. And then we have Beth with her cast. So the part of the bite cure theory is that she was bitten right there on the arm, and the cast isn't actually about a broken arm or a sprained wrist. It's covering up a bite. And that there were all kinds of experiments going on at Grady, and somehow they managed to save her life, and she survived the bite. Now, of course, they didn't show us that. If that's the case, then it is just a theory, but there is a lot of evidence for that theory, and I think that there's a very good chance that it's going to turn out to be true. But the point is, what we do know about what happened in Alone, from her point of view, is what she told Gorman, and she was actually a little bit fuzzy on it herself. She said that she was fighting a Walker in the road, and then everything went black. So that's all she really remembers. So, the other thing is that we believe what happened with Carol is very indicative of what happened with Beth because this is the way that Grady operates. So we know that they would take in people who were hurt, but not necessarily people who were not. And that is because they only wanted weak people who they could take care of and then tell those people that they owed them. And it was just a way to control people and make sure that they could keep them there, right? So we saw that with Noah. Noah said that he was hurt and his uncle was not, and they took him and not his uncle. I think the same would have definitely been true of Beth and Daryl. I don't know if, how much they knew about Daryl or if they saw him, but he's going to be the big threat. You take one look at him, he knows how to survive. And they would not have wanted to take him with them because he would be a threat to them. But Beth was smaller in stature. She was already injured because she had hurt hurt her ankle, so she was probably limping. And the theory is because they hit Carol with the car and then took her into Grady, that they might have done the same thing to Beth. The reason everything went black, she was just fighting a walker because she ran into a walker in the yard, right? And so she was just trying to, get away from the walker or kill it or whatever. And then they probably hit her with the car. And that's why everything went black. And then they put her in the trunk or whatever and took off. But what if when they hit her, because, the walker that Daryl killed in the yard might have been the one she was fighting with. And what if when they hit her, that allowed the walker to bite her arm? Okay, so that's kind of the basic gist of the theory. So whatever injury she had, even the injury on her face or scratch marks with stitches, it would have probably come from that. You get hit by a car, you're going to end up with some scratches, right? But it also hasn't been confirmed, certainly, and because we haven't seen that. But that's what I would say it's probably from. And like I said, I just hope that they go back and show us that, because I really, really want to see it. And if it is a matter of that theory being correct, then they probably will show it to us, because that's obviously going to be very important. So hope that helps. And I'm sure I just made your head spin with all those theories. But again, it's just stuff that TD has been actually saying for a long time. And people have had that theory for quite some time since Coda happened. So yeah. All right. I'm going to call it there, and I will be back with more tomorrow. Bye.